when I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at age 15, I had two different messages given to me. One was positive and proactive and came from my family and friends and some of the medical professionals I was dealing with, and it told me that I was going to be okay and that I could handle this thing, and that there were certain steps that I had to take in order to live well with type 1 diabetes. And the other stressed the negative aspects, the limitations that this thing places on you, and the complications that I was going to be forced to deal with if things didn't go well. And what we want to do through Welcome to Type 1 is stress the positive, the proactive. The fact of the matter about living with type 1 diabetes is that if you aren't proactive, if you don't take good care of yourself, yes, you are going to be faced with these complications, but that doesn't have to be the case. All too often we hear the negative in the media from people who don't know much about living with the condition, and even from medical professionals or people in the hospital who've seen too much of the bad side of type 1 diabetes and have not seen enough of the good side, the people who, the many people who in this day and age living with type 1 diabetes are doing just fine, are going to have long and healthy and in some ways very normal lives from a long-term health perspective. And what we want to do through Welcome to Type 1 is make sure that everyone has access to that perspective, that psychological framework that, hey, if you take care of yourself, you're going to be okay. Especially when they're newly diagnosed. We want them to have that second option, that second outlook available to them. And so we also want to create the information and the resources that you need in order to make that option a reality. So to do that, in 2012, we're creating a documentary wherein we take a young person newly diagnosed with type 1 from the shock and trauma that comes with having a serious medical condition, and we expose them to all kinds of people who are doing all kinds of wonderful things all over the world while living with type 1. Not only adventure athletes, although that physical aspect is nice because it sort of shows a physical busting through of the physical limitations that type 1 diabetes can place on you, but also people who are just doing, other everyday things, living normal lives with type 1 diabetes. And as that young person meets those people and comes to get to know type 1 diabetes and comes to understand the intricacies of living with the condition, we are going to see a sort of a psychological change taking place from, oh, this might be a really tough thing, to, hey, here's how I live with it, here's how I deal with it, and everything is going to be okay. And toward the end of the documentary, we'll see them giving talks and promoting that message for other people living with type 1 diabetes. And the second major part is, of course, the website that you're on right now. And as this grows, we'll see more and more social media, Twitter, Facebook, blogs, Q&As. What we have up at present is the introductory video to let people know about the project, and a feature where you can sort of delve further. You can click on the profiles of the people featured in that introductory video and go more and more in depth, see interviews with them. And this fits what's going to exist in the future, where you're going to be able to click on profiles of people who are featured in the documentary, and also delve further to get more information about the psychology of living with type 1, type 1 and exercise, the products that are available to people living with type 1 diabetes, and all of the different sort of behind the scenes aspects of the documentary, as well as the type 1 community, videos and links and questions and blogs and posts from people who are living well with type 1. I'm supposed to now tell you a bit about myself because this is on my profile page. I really started getting involved with the type 1 community when I came back from a bicycle trip I did in Africa. I created a documentary of that trip and traveled around and did some motivational speaking about the trip and type 1 diabetes, and also more recently about the psychology of living with type 1. And so what I do is teach university, teach media psychology, focusing on how new media is shaping our lives, is shaping our individual existences and psychologies, and looking at how it shapes our stories, how it shapes the way that we perceive our own lives. And I also do a lot to do with how video, how documentary, film, even books, narratives that we come across in all different types of media affect us in positive ways, how they can open us up to new ways of seeing the world and new possibilities. And of course, that ties back to what Welcome to Type 1 is all about from a type 1 perspective.